Carolina Cossu. I'm Director of Sales for the Southeast for Etica Wines. Etica is a wine importer. We focus only on Italian wines. And actually, our company and my career in this company has been very connected with the regions, just on the fact that we only import Italian wines. So since day first, we have took a decision. Our strategy was very clear to focus on what we are and what we know. I've been working for this company now for almost 10 years. I was very young when I came to the US, and when Nidal invited me to participate in the conference, I was very excited. First to collaborate with him because we have been working together for many years now, but also about the theme. That it's very, I will say, I'm very close to this theme. For me, origins, it's very important. For my, as a person first, because I believe it's very important to know where you come from, and also for my work, because what I talk every day and what we sell every day, it's our origins. Is culture, is product, is traditions, where we come from. And I just came back from Italy. I was in Italy for Vinitaly, which is a famous fair for wines that happens in Verona. And during this week that I was traveling around the country through wineries, it was actually perfect to get ready for this talk. And I reflect a lot about origins. And one of the most important sentences that I heard during this week was from one of our producers of Barolo, young producers, that is doing things. He's doing new things. But he said something very important. I don't want to be conservative. I want to be traditional. What does it mean? It means that you want always to respect the origins, what have been done in the past, especially when it comes to wine. You can't change everything. But at the same time, I need to be ready and open to what's happening today, to innovation, to new techniques, and to our new customers and consumers. So I will say this is how I feel. It was perfect after this trip, and to you. Thank you.
Hello. My name is James Pergola. I've been with Nespresso for 20 years. I'm very proud to say that. Hopefully you've tried some of our delicious coffees, which are the expression of origins. We picked those very specifically because they express the origin of the region from which they're grown. And that's really exactly how the coffee industry sort of expresses or communicates origin. If you toast a Colombian bean just right, it is the purest expression of Colombia. And so the Colombian terroir, because it's high in elevation, has a wonderfully acidic profile, that berry note. And so what happens is that you're suddenly all the smartest people in the room. When you go to a coffee shop and you see a Colombian coffee on the menu, you know exactly what their terroir will taste like, what that expression is in the cup, no matter if it's high roasted, low roasted, etc. So of course coffee grows, we were talking about it, coffee grows all over the world, so there's not one particular origin we're talking about here. But it's sort of funny because there's an association of an Italian origin, you know, espresso. I don't think coffee grows in Italy. There's no coffee, right, growing in Italy that I've heard of. But it is coffee that's grown around the world that is blended and roasted to mimic or to sort of highlight Italian roasting styles, dark roast, light roast, etc. And that really is, again, the expression of the origins, whether it's blended or a single origin like we have in our Congo, our Colombia, and our Indonesia out there for you to try. So that's how that works. Next.
I work at a company called Diageo. You may or may not have heard of the company. I hope that you've heard of our brands. We are best known for our brands like Johnnie Walker, Don Julio, Kettle One, and Guinness, many, many, many others. And as you can imagine, so many of those brands are expressions of where they are from. Guinness is the #1 tourist destination in Ireland. Our Scotch whiskey is also the biggest industry driver of the economy in Scotland, and many, many more. I personally have been with Diageo for 15 years, across 3 continents, starting in New York, where I was working in marketing on a little-known brand named Captain Morgan, which is less known for its origins, more known for its vibes. But those vibes come from the fact that it's a Caribbean rum, and Caribbeans like to have a good time. And there's, a laid-back, fun vibe that is infused into our rum. From there, I moved to Singapore and began working on innovation, mostly across our whiskey brands, of which we have many. While working on innovation there, when we think about origins, many of those whiskeys that I worked on were single malts that were 20, 30, 40 years in the making, because they were these very high-aged, very high-end luxury whiskeys. And what was really interesting was finding that balance between telling the origin story while also maintaining a sense of modernity for a young, high-net-worth consumer to want to invest in a 50-year-old whiskey. So, maintaining that relevance, connecting deeply to your roots, and using that to tell a modern story was kind of what innovation in luxury was all about. From there, I moved to Miami to work on innovation with our Latin American consumers and our Latin American business, and have been introduced to some really amazing regional brands that I didn't even know about before, things like Buchanan's whiskey, Old Parr whiskey, and of course, some of those global brands as well. I see someone nodding. She's definitely gets it. You know Buchanan's, I'm guessing. So all that to say, consumers really, when it comes to spirits, there are locally ingrained rituals, there are passionate consumers who really love the brands, and they deeply connect to both kind of the global nature of some of our brands, as well as that local piece of how it's consumed, with whom, and in what moment. So very much looking forward to discussing together today.
Thank you. I'm going to start with a bit of a generic question. So premium brands means luxury, right? And I feel like the term luxury has changed and shifted. Like even during COVID, for example, before luxury was spending a weekend in a luxury hotel, then all of a sudden it meant spending a weekend away from everyone in a chalet in the mountains. What does luxury right now means to you, and you feel that term has changed in your industry? Whoever wants to start.
Well, I will say things we all know have changed a lot in the last 6 years, right? We are just about in a moment where luxury is not anymore high-end brands or high-end goods. Luxury is turning more in experiences. So it's a very delicate moment now for premium luxury segment in general. I will say for us, what we have been seeing, yes, people are changing the way to drink. As we all know, people are drinking less. The good thing is that people are drinking better. As an Italian, I will say, ambassador and working more specifically in the Italian sector, something it's helping us a lot to have people investing more money in drinking better Italian wine. And one of these is the tourist, because we have a lot of tourism in Italy. And when people come back home, either to Canada, either to US, either to Brazil, they want to drink and they want to continue to have the experience. So luxury, I would say today, is not anymore goods, is less, I would say, goods, is less status, but is more experiences. And we're lucky probably because wine, it is a lot of experience. So this is what currently we are seeing.
I've had the advantage of being at the brand many years, and we just are on the edge of a complete rebrand of our entire identity, honestly. When I started, it was sort of a black monogram and a black logo on a black background, and it was very beige, and we have the very particular advantage of encapsulating our coffees, right? So that barrier, which is very protective, which protects all of the aromas and flavors, but that thing, takes us one step away from the coffee. And so, we've been shaking our heads for years saying, well, we have delicious coffee, we have expertise at every level, but where is that accessibility? Where exactly is that story being told? How is that story being told? How can we sort of proverbially rip open the capsule and really have people understand where we're coming from? And so we just took on a brand new brand ambassador, Dua Lipa. She is really helping us quite a lot in terms of a younger audience, in terms of our look and feel. We have created something a little bit more sort of out of the box, more colorful, more exciting. And so I think then innovation for us equates to accessibility, I would say, or rather luxury equates to accessibility in that it's not so necessarily untouchable, but you can sort of get it to the masses and have it still be a quality product.
I totally agree, and I just wanted to add, I think, consumers are still trading up. Everybody wants to get something that feels a little special, right? But it doesn't always have to mean trading up to the definition of something very expensive. I think you can find something special at all price points. The key is, like what you were both saying, is about telling stories, connecting consumers, finding meaning in something that consumers can connect with. This is a sort of silly anecdote, but Johnny Walker had a collaboration with Squid Games, which is a Netflix show. It is, hopefully you're aware of it. And each of the bottles that they had numbers on them, because in the show Squid Games, the uniforms have numbers. And they were just assigned randomly. And my office was doing a giveaway of these bottles, and I noticed that people were taking a lot of time picking which bottle they want. And so I asked a few people, like, why'd you pick that one? And oh, well, it's my mom's birthday, or oh, this one is my lucky number. Oh, this one and everyone grabbed a bottle, 4 out of 5 people, grabbed a bottle based on what the numbers meant to them. And it's just one of those moments where you have an aha of, like, everybody wants to find meaning in everything they can. And if we can give them that at any price point, then that's premium, right? That's special. And I thought that was really interesting.
Thank you. This next question is probably more for Paige and James. When people talk about brands like Nespresso or Diageo, I think there's this preconceived notion that quality and authenticity can suffer at the expense of mass production. Persuade me, please, this is not true.
Hot seat. Okay, well, I've been to Colombia, I've been to Brazil, Colombia twice, Brazil once, and I think the amount of quality, this sounds, this is such a PR answer, but the amount of quality control checks, the amount of innovation, the amount of taste profiling that's done at every single level is actually quite astounding. Someone came up to me at the conference earlier and was just sort of like, I've been to the factory and the train goes right into the bridge. There's a big train of green coffee that literally is built into the building. But there are people, actual people, who take their aluminum rods and stick it into the big bag of coffee, and every one of those green bean samples is tested and retested. And then there's our roasters, and sort of that's where I come in. That's the kind of, I'm always the mad scientist in the office shouting, taste this with this is delicious. But it is the roasting which actually transforms that green bean, right, which comes preloaded with all these wonderful taste characteristics, to its perfect peak, right? I'm a kind of loud American Italian guy from New York City, and that's sort of where I thrive, right? So if I was sort of put into another environment, I don't know if I would be to the level to my highest quality, right? So roasting sort of brings out that that perfection, that expertise. And then, like I said earlier, all of that is put into the capsule because we want to preserve all of the aromas. We want to preserve all of the flavors. And so the idea that expertise is really just sort of lost because it is at such a high scale or high level, I think it's just the opposite. Because we are working at such a high level, we have to be super experts in making that happen at such a large scale.
Yeah, I mean, just an example again, Johnnie Walker is our biggest brand, most widely distributed, most global. It's over 200 years old, the brand of Johnnie Walker, and we take that really, really seriously. I think, nobody wants to be the one who kills 200 years of heritage and passion and love. And I think, we're still produced in Scotland, we're bottled in Scotland. It would be a lot cheaper for us to ship our whiskey to Latin America and have it bottled in Brazil or Mexico. But for us, that quality, that control that we can get in Scotland, to bottle in Scotland, is so important for that brand. So we do everything we can to protect it. Whether or not it's your favorite whiskey brand, it is an iconic brand. And yeah, we really value and believe in it. And my name is Paige Walker, not related, but Johnny would be tossing around in his grave if he knew that we were not treating our brand with caution and love.
Okay, not to let Carolina completely off the hook. We talk a lot about sustainability in the food world, in the beverage world. More and more sustainability also when it comes to how you treat your staff, how you behave. There's been a lot of articles about that. When you pick your producers, the winemakers, how do you pay attention to their character? Because I know plenty of winemakers and they're characters. So does this, come into effect, who you work with?
Well, for sure is a part of the factors, I would say, that we look at. I would say also that we are pretty lucky in Italy, and I would say probably the kind of producers that we look into it, they are all aligned with this kind of characteristic, because mostly of our producers, also if they are not, when it comes to organic, sustainable wineries, also if they are not certified, today mostly of the producer, I would say the good producer in Italy, works with those criteria. So it is for sure part of the factor that we look at, but I would say we're pretty lucky on those. But yes, wine producers have characters. Yeah.
You all operate globally. How do you translate local cultures without flattening them or appropriating their culture?
I could take a stab at that one. I think of course, it's a fine balance, right? And I think what we try to do within innovation is find opportunities that are authentic to the brands that we create. So one example that I was talking about a little bit earlier is when we decided to launch our first flavored whiskey from Buchanan's, which was Buchanan's Pineapple. Now, Yes, Buchanan's is a brand from Scotland. No, pineapples do not grow in Scotland, just so you know. But the reason we decided to go with pineapple was because we wanted to just understand how are consumers drinking our brand right now. And one of the most popular ways that consumers were drinking it was by mixing it with pineapple juice. So we saw this happening. It's an unusual way to drink whiskey, but it was not an unusual way to drink whiskey amongst Mexican-American consumers, amongst some consumers in Colombia. And so when we started to explore flavors, we felt pineapple was the right way to go. And we did, and it has been a huge success. And I think the reason it's been successful is not just because pineapples are delicious, but it's because Buchanan's and pineapple kind of naturally belong together, even though one is a Scotch whiskey brand and one is a tropical fruit in some strange way. So it's really just about ensuring that you're not just picking a flavor or picking an idea because it's cool. You have to pick what's truly deeply connected to your brand in some way before you decide to create something new with it.
Yeah, so I have a story of 3 coffees, actually, which illustrate this point beautifully. So years ago, we had an absolutely wonderful coffee called Cubanilla. And Cubanilla was an intensity 13. To give you some background, our intensity levels are from 2 to 10, 2 to 11. So with 13 blew people's minds. It was the most amazing thing ever. And it was a beautifully done box. It actually came with sugar sticks because culturally, sugar is added and you stir and stir and stir and the espuma, it sort of starts to form and everything. And it was an absolutely wonderful coffee and people loved it and it flew off the shelves. But then, we caught a little flack because of the beautiful illustrations, but it depicted the vibrant Cuban culture. There was sort of smoke in the air and music notes and things like that. And they said, well, maybe that's a little bit of appropriation. So then years later, we actually went into Cuba and purchased coffee from Cuba for the first time in 50 years. And we put that out. And that was sort of a very similar but very different message. Right? It was a very different message in terms of what we were doing sociopolitically there, et cetera, et cetera. So there was that. And then finally, we had a Miami coffee, and we were so incredibly proud to put that onto the map. We have a category or series of coffee called World Explorations, which celebrate the cultures of cities like Stockholm and Vienna and Miami. We were actually tasked with, as the U.S. market, to say pick, a coffee city. And the first coffee city that I think of is Seattle. You would always ever think of Seattle, right? And then, of course, my heart says New York. Coffee cart, coffee. But Miami really sort of rang true. And so it was almost a third iteration of really celebrating the culture of Cuban coffee. Right, of that really sort of darkly rich roasted coffee and that culture. So that's how we kind of stayed authentic to that origin without appropriating or without sort of keeping respect there.
Carolina, you market Italian wines, right?
Yeah.
But like yesterday at the party, we had Slovenian wine, Movia. And I know people, when I say Slovenia, they don't really know where that is. And they don't necessarily connect Slovenia to luxury brands, premium products. So how do you approach marketing that kind of product to, let's say, a crowd here in Miami?
Yeah, this is actually a good, is an exception because before I should have said at the beginning, but Movia, it is an exception in our portfolio. And the reason why it is in an Italian portfolio is because Movia comes from the Collio, which is a region that we share between Slovenia and Italy. And we are really on the border. So some of the vineyards of Movia are still in Italy. This, of course, because of history, that territory was part of Italy before. And the family Movia, it is a Venetian family. So yes, today is Slovenia, but let's say the tradition and by history, this winery was Italian, and we decided to accept in our portfolio But of course, so we had to communicate it because people were like, okay, are you opening the door to other countries? Not. We're not. We want to stick with the plan, but Movia fits perfectly because it's part of our history. How to communicate the brand to Miami or to the US in general? As you saw, we opened some special bottle yesterday. Normally bottles are open upside down. These are opposite. So there is a long history behind Movia, and that's what makes this brand special.
Yeah.
So definitely the origins are the success of Movia.
Yeah, that's another wine that Italians kind of stole from us, but let's leave that story for another time. Coffee, wine, spirits are all deeply connected to rituals. How do rituals travel across cultures? Like me personally, I try to, whenever I travel, I will drink that is like very local there, but you know, how do you approach that?
That's a tough one. I think, you know, every culture has its own rituals, right? And I think what we like to do with our brands is to bring a little bit of that culture into other places. So, for example, Don Julio, an amazing tequila brand, deep historic roots in Mexico, in Guadalajara, can be consumed in a number of ways. In some cultures, that can be just consumed neat on ice. In some cultures, that's the margarita, right? Which is, of course, a very, very classic drink. In some cultures, it's a paloma. I think what we try to do is understand how consumers like to drink spirits. Is it a mixed drink? Is it on the rocks or neat? And then we try to offer something that works beautifully in that way. There are times where we will communicate a new ritual, but the truth is, things stick best when they fit into existing rituals that consumers already have and offer something new for them.
I mean, coffee is the ultimate ritual. Sorry, right? She didn't tee up this question, but I don't know. I mean, for me, when I was younger, when I went to NYU, and you know, I visited my friend who was in Georgetown. I took a bus, Chinatown to Chinatown. It was $17 at the time, and I didn't know the city. I didn't know the area that I was in. But then I saw a Starbucks, and so I walked into a Starbucks, and I knew the language there. You know, and I knew exactly what was happening, how to order a coffee, their language. And I said to myself, I said, okay, now I'm comfortable in this city, and I was able to kind of use that as a jumping point. But in terms of the rituals of coffee and how we communicate that, I mean, I think, you know, we had a coffee years ago called Cafecito de Colombia, and it was just because it's sort of and you know, I found it was a term of endearment because it is a show of affection, a show of love when you sit down and you give coffee to someone. I think some of our earliest coffee memories are with a parent, a grandparent, you know, whether it's coffee on the sugar cube, you know, in the mouth of the baby or something like that. The first time I ever had espresso with my grandfather, you know, that type of thing. So I think there's that, and then we take those origin stories, and again, without, you know, cheapening them, with respecting them, we kind of double tap and expand to our world explorations category. And that is an homage to all the ways that coffee is drunk around the world. In Stockholm, say, we have a, you know, delicious coffee that is driven by how coffee is enjoyed in Stockholm and Sweden. And you know, we recommend it with a lot of milk and sugar because that is how it's drank at the country of origin, so, or at the city of origin. So, you know, that's sort of how we make that message clear in terms of our coffees.
Well, for us, wine it is very traditional, and it is a ritual. It is very connected to rituals. I was just actually called during Vinitaly to for an interview about corks. Wine is a ritual from the moment that we open, how to open the bottle, to how we're drinking, to where we're drinking. So it is definitely part of experience, ritual, traditions. And I must say that it's a little bit connected with the question that you had before. It's not really easy for us, for people that operate in the wine industry, either you're South African, Italian, or French, to adapt to local traditions. Because you can, yes, it is true that today you can enjoy wine in different moments of the day, but still it is in those moments. The way to, embrace other culture, it is for sure the pairings. So before, for sure, we were more focusing on Italian restaurants, drinking our wines, more Italian foods, blah, blah, blah. Today, we are doing the opposite. We are trying to go out there and introducing our wines to other people, to other restaurants, to other cultures. And I must say, it's going very well. So I think for wine, maybe spirits and coffee, you are a little bit ahead of us. The wine industry, it is a little bit still behind because I like the words of the producer, actually was Borgogno. They said we want to be traditional but not conservative. That's what we need to continue to do because the wine industry is still very conservative. So the next 10 years for the wine industry is going to be very fun for this.
I was just going to say, I think it's, what you were saying earlier about tourism as well, right? Consumers, people are traveling so much more than they ever have before, and if they aren't, they're thinking about it. They're connected to people in cultures all over the world. And there's something really cool about bringing your origins somewhere else. Again, forgive me for constantly using references from the spirits industry. That's what I'm always looking at. But I think Aperol has done such an amazing job of this, right? Like whether you're in Brazil, whether you're in Mexico, whether in New York, looking over at the East River, you will see an Aperol spritz, you'll see that beautiful umbrella and the kind of vibe, and suddenly you're transported to Italy. And I think, that is something that if you can do that consistently and do it well, you're able to connect with consumers and actually almost give them a travel experience in a small moment, right? And I'm sure you guys are working on that.
Yeah. We receive constantly, which is also hard to keep up with. We receive constantly emails from private that comes back from trips asking where to buy these wines. And of course, we put all our efforts, move our distributor, get this wine to this little liquor store outside of Atlanta, the last one that happened to me because these people were traveling to Valpolicella, and we of course want to get the Valpolicella wines to them. So it is true. The tourism, the travels are helping us a lot, and it's just a matter of time, I think, because wine, it can, like we said, you guys can come out with new product and new ideas, new things. For us, we can't really transform the wine that it is. We can come out with a new wine, yes. It might be a new blend, but it is still going to be a classic wine and probably a classic blend. But instead, the industry felt we are trying to keep up.
What about, so mostly you two, you work a lot with Latin American products, right? Both coffee and spirits. I feel, the situation, political situation, can change a lot, and then we have countries that unfortunately, they have some amazing ingredients. Like I was in Venezuela 10 days ago, and I had cucuy, which people don't really know, but it's kind of like mezcal, and mezcal is a big hit. And then Colombia, the chefs also, for the longest time, weren't able to access amazing ingredients because of the political situation there with the narcos. Have you had any of like amazing products that you really wish you could use in your company, market them, and it's just not accessible?
No. No, I mean, I think to sort of to bring an answer to that question, I think there is a lot of stuff going on climate-wise right now, and so I think what is happening is coffee is literally getting pushed up the mountain because it's cooler and cooler there, and so I think then the way to answer that question for us is it's all still there, but it's changing very rapidly. And it's changing like a lot, well, that's rapidly, but a lot quicker and a lot more complex. There's a lot more complexity to it than we think. So we really have to work with the farmer. We really have to kind of build that relationship and say, this Colombian Arabica that this Latin American Arabica that we have, that we had consistently, because we have to make our taste consistent. Our Bejo is one of our best sellers, and it has Latin American coffee in it, and we have to make sure that it's exactly, the same taste and all of that, but coffee is a live product, right? So we have to work with that farmer to say, okay, well, this is the taste profile we're looking for. Now that you're so many 100 meters above where you were before, how can we make that work, right? So I think the accessibility conversation is really more about making sure, in our case, that the coffee that we use is consistent in profile. Because at the end of the day, that's why we choose it, right? We're making formulas, we're making blends. We're not other coffee companies that can say, we have a limited batch, and here it is, and we're just, we're giving it away. We have to have consistent recipes. So that's how I would answer that question, yeah.
I mean, I would just agree with you. I think, look, there are incredible flavors, Pisco in Peru, like there's just so many great spirits out there. I can't say that we have ever had one that we, had to have but couldn't. But we do struggle with kind of, planning the future and thinking about it takes 12 years to grow an agave plant, for example, into maturity. So how do we balance that with the growing demand for tequila in the world and trying to expand beyond our, North America and Latin America borders? Scotch whiskey, as I mentioned earlier, it's a minimum of 3 years, but in most cases it's 12 plus years. So, managing our resources in a world where climate is changing, and those are all things where we definitely have to think about and find ways to manage the constraints.
I feel really bad taking tequila shots now. I didn't know that the plant took 12 years to grow.
Yeah, think about the agaves you destroyed.
Maybe I'll sip my tequila going forward, perhaps, not to disrespect the plant.
I think we're kind of running out of time, and I know the audience probably has a lot of questions. If I've learned anything in these 2 days, very curious audience. So please, anyone who has any questions. Where's the, what? We have to. Thank you.
So, funny, somewhat disparaging little anecdote. Yesterday I was telling someone about, the conference and like what was there, and I'm like, oh my God, and Nescafe had an installation. And they're like, Nescafe at a gastronomy event? Yeah, Nescafe, the little pods. Oh, you mean Nespresso? So Nescafe has been around forever. In certain demographics, like especially in Asia and Latin America, it's been a big, big name. It's what a lot of people associate with coffee. Nescafe comes from Nestle. A lot of affordable things, powdered milk, Nido, things like that. When Nespresso launched, and I remember when it became a big thing, what were struggles that you had in associating it with luxury and not with instant coffee mix, your more democratic product? And do you still, obviously in my case, yeah, I got them confused with Nescafe, but do you still experience that, where it's just like, well, isn't this Nestle? Like, how luxurious can this be?
Friends and family members still think after 20 years that I'm visiting a chocolate factory, and I'm not. I'm visiting a coffee factory. Are you get me the chocolate? Oh, you mean the Nestle chocolate? Of course, that's our parent company, and I'll go into the little Nestle stores. They have kind of like in our offices, and I'll buy all of the fabulous Nestle products. But I think that we were able to delineate luxury. The branding that I just kind of eschewed earlier, right? Like, because it was super high-end, super premium, a lot of, and I guess this sort of reverts back to what we were just speaking of, a lot of people got introduced to Nespresso through luxury hotels. That was one of our main ways to communicate with everyone. Our professional division, which is quite strong here, puts on all our activations and events for these types of things. That's really where people saw Nespresso at first. So that was a luxury there. It was pricey at the time. We had maybe less accessible pricing, so that kind of sort of kept us at a luxury level. And then there was again the premiumization of the actual coffee itself, right? So this is not to say that Nescafe is not an excellent product. I can tell you just as many quality control checks for Nescafe because it is Nestle. I think people forget that we are a part of Nestle. We're Nespresso. That's where the word came from. And Nestle itself is led in such high regard. When we are vetting a vendor or someone we have to work with, there are so many checks for like that specific factory. But then I think as years went on and we sort of became more accessible, people are saying, oh, you're just a commoditized coffee. You just put your coffee in a capsule and move on with your day. And there's all these different, I was going to use the word imposters, but competitors, things like that. But I think that when we're talking about luxury, it's like what someone had said earlier. I had a question earlier about sort of Michelin-starred restaurants, and when you're Michelin-starred, the next day, what do you do? Well, you just keep doing what you're doing. You keep rolling out that consistency because you are so incredibly confident, right, that your product is amazing, and then the luxury story kind of follows with that, because tasting is believing. I have to get that in there, right? But yeah, so.
Anyone else?
Hi. I thought you were going to answer just hire George Clooney as your spokesman, and you're all
Well,
set.
I come at a much lesser price.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I wanted to, it's a quick question for each one of you. Based on your work, do you have, or which one do you think is a region that is yet to be discovered in each one of your works, like a wine region in Italy, origin, coffee, or a spirit or something? Is there a region that you think is going to be like the next big thing or to be discovered?
That's a very good question. I think I will say this first and foremost. There is still so much within Latin America that has yet to be discovered. Everyone knows tequila and mezcal, but of course there are just so many incredible spirits that you can experience throughout Latin America. I can't tell you which ones exactly are the ones that are next to explode, but there's definitely opportunities there. One other thing, and maybe I'm biased from my time in Asia, but while I was in Asia, I was part of a team that created the first single malt distillery in China. And it's in a beautiful province called Yunnan, which is just absolutely stunning nature, feels like a fairy tale. And I do believe that in the world of whiskey, China will emerge as one of the best quality producers of whiskeys in the world, probably, in the next, call it 10 to 20 years. Yeah.
Yeah, just quickly, I was just at the World of Coffee Conference and in San Diego, and they, we have our geshes and all of that, but this Ethiopian coffee is so incredibly beautiful. It's just so delicious and so floral and light and beautiful, and like what's being done with it by expert brewers is really quite astounding. You know, to get the most floral, the most light, the most expressive. But also Vietnam is a region which we've always ever sourced from, but we're really talking about it now. We had a lot of Robusta from Vietnam, and it was always sort of with the best possible respect to the word and afterthought. It was just sort of an adding, you know, to kind of bring depth to the blend. But now it really is coming out as on top. So I'd say Vietnam, yeah.
For us, I will say we are in a lucky moment because we are seeing a trend growing on white wines from Italy. And probably while for now we have always been more focused and seen a lot of success for regions like Tuscany and Piedmont, I'm seeing coming some trend more for white wines regions like the south of Italy and the islands. So probably we will see more coming out Sicily and Sardinia in the future. Yeah, this is what I'm seeing. Of course, other you know, going back, wine is it's hard to develop new trends and bringing people to drink wines to new regions because it is so connected with the origins, right? So Italy, France, for sure the new world like Chile, Argentina, it's not so easy though to drive consumers to other regions, but some new names coming out too is the East Europe too.
One more there.
So pretty much my question was regarding, like we were talking at the beginning, pretty much luxury has changed. Now luxury used to be something that was about being maybe like unique, maybe something that it was smaller batches. Now I think luxury has become something that is more about wellness, more about being part of, like, I think brands are trying to become more part of the day-by-day lives of the clients. So how has that changed into your brand approach, and especially about creating experiences for your customers on the day-by-day life?
Well, for us, we are trying to constantly, because at the end of the day, that's what we do when it comes to wine, to sit at the table. We not anymore with only our people, which means wine people, buyers, but we're trying to extend invitations to consumer private and trying to connect more with other segments. It could be art, it could be fashion, it could be any other segment, trying to kind of integrate it more with other segments and trying to make wine more approachable for other people, because when it comes to wine conversations, there is always this like, oh, okay, you pick the wine, right? It's always like, oh, I don't know nothing about wine. It is almost intimidating, right? So we are trying to make people more comfortable to talk about wine, and to answer more specifically to your question, make experience for them, right? So now you're seeing more companies like business that organize wine experiences. Either is a wine dinner with like 20, 30 people, specifically on a region, but maybe happening in a beautiful location, or also wine tours. So yes, we're trying to speak more to consumers, closer, and making experiences for them.
It's an interesting cross-section, the cross-section of luxury and wellness, right? Because if you have access to those things, expensive products, you know, so all that stuff. So we actually have an entire range now dedicated to wellness. It's Coffee Plus. And you know, none of the stuff that we eat is just what we eat. It has to have collagen or caffeine or extra something in it, kombucha, whatever it is. So we have this entire line that really features vitamins, that has added B6, B12, things like that. So I think that is that's part of the luxury conversation, part of the accessible luxury conversation, because your everyday products are giving you benefits that you otherwise would maybe have had to have paid for in other situations. So that's how I would answer that.
Just like one additional thing, which may sound obvious, but it's really, I think, from certain industries, wine, whiskey, we come from so much history and heritage that sometimes we seem like we're not for everyone, right? And I think what we've been trying to do is to break down those barriers and create innovation that is more welcoming and more inviting, and maybe it's a little sweeter, and maybe it has a lower ABV, and just invites more people to try so that they can connect with their friends and spend time together, and especially in that lower ABV space, stay in the moment and really just appreciate time together while enjoying something that's great quality, and you don't have to learn how to like it, right? It's just good from the first taste. So I think, luxury came from being a very kind of exclusive club to being just something of great quality that you can identify with as a person, and that makes you feel like you're doing something special.
This is directed to Carolina and Diageo. So we're talking about origins, and a lot of times it's very... not Carolina, I'm sorry, Paige. Never mind. We're talking about origins and how they can be place-specific, especially with terroir. So how does the narrative and the branding and things change when something like Guinness Nigeria becomes a thing? How do you maintain that story?
That's such a good question. Guinness is originated in Ireland. It's best known for being an Irish beer. What's really interesting is actually its history in Africa goes back a very, very long time. Goes, just full disclosure, obviously goes back to colonialism, right? Where people wanted their Guinness. And so when Guinness decided they actually opened a brewery in Nigeria, it was to serve kind of the expat group. But when Guinness went there, they hired locals, they became ingrained in local culture, and the Guinness there actually became so embraced by Nigerians that they consider it a Nigerian brand. And it's a really interesting difference versus a lot of our brands that have our Scotch whiskies that have to be produced in Scotland, right? Beer is unique in that it can be produced anywhere, and it still uses, the same yeast from, of course, the brewery in Ireland, but it was able to connect itself so deeply into local culture that I would say most Nigerians would say it's a local brand, right? And I think that Guinness is comfortable with that. It is a brand that's all about, just from a kind of history and brand story perspective, it's all about communion and coming together and friendship. And I think that can happen anywhere. So the unique taste is the same taste that you will get from a beer from a Guinness in Ireland, but the experience is very Nigerian in Nigeria.
I think unfortunately, we have to wrap it up for our last panel, but thank you to all of you. Very interesting conversation. Thank you.